Okay, we are live. Welcome. As people begin to come into our room, welcome to our masterclass webinar. I'm Doug Brown, and I'm here with Walt Hampton. We're so excited and happy that you've decided to join us today. And we know you're very busy. We want to kind of jump right into it. Walt?
I am so happy to be with you, Doug. This is a program we've been thinking about doing for a long time because there are a lot of challenges right now. We're thrilled to have so many of you. We took a look at the attendance list before we went live, and a lot of new names. Welcome to our community. A lot of familiar names. Welcome back. It's so nice to see you again. And we've got some great stuff to share with you today. We're going to go off camera so you can focus on the syntax that we have to share with you today. And we'll come back to wrap up when we're done. We're going to keep it within an hour, and we're looking forward to diving in with you.
All right. Let's go. So, Walt, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. So, we're here to talk about the top 5 challenges to growing a satisfying law practice, so one that you actually like. And we're going to give you some solutions that work. We've got the greatest profession on the planet to get to help people in times of need and help businesses navigate through the challenges and solve complex problems and negotiate deals. We get to do justice, change laws, literally change the world. And what's true is that many of us are feeling super weary. For many of us, there are days when we just want to throw in the towel and go to work at Starbucks. As professionals, we're used to working hard. That's what we do. Stress and overwhelm are ongoing challenges. But there's also a much bigger challenge that's going on right now as the result of the last couple of years. It's affecting really successful people, even those who've powered through and enjoyed business growth. It's pervasive. Something that smart, successful people don't want to admit because we're the people who get shit done.
Yeah, and the cost of these last 22 months, Doug, is showing up in so many different ways. It's showing up in apathy. It's showing up in running on autopilot, loss of purpose. Everything feels like a chore. And how did I get here anyway? Today in the Wall Street Journal, there was a poll released that shows for the very first time in many years and decades, the number of people reporting that they're unhappy exceeds by a significant margin than those who are happy. And this is particularly true in the professions. And what makes it all that much heavier is that a lot of the fun has been sucked out of what we've done. You deserve to have fun and to be satisfied. As Doug said, we have one of the greatest professions on the planet. You get to enjoy a satisfying profession. You get to enjoy the rich rewards. And if that's what you're looking for, to overcome these challenges, to move beyond these feelings, then you're definitely in the right place.
So we're going to share some of the best practices we use with our private coaching clients to grow a law practice they actually like and find satisfaction. So these are the things that you can use to build the skills and habits you need to get over the daily firefighting, maybe trying to please the unpleasable client, trying to do everything yourself, make time to work on your practice and tell you what that is rather than being just trapped by it. Move faster, make more money, and have more fun. And if there's ever been a time not to wonder, like, well, what if I could get that? The time is right now.
Yeah, you don't have to be a student of history, but for those of you who are on our webinar today, you are. And you know what happened after the pandemic of 1918. There was nearly a decade of unbridled economic expansion. Empires rose out of the ashes of 9/11. this moment in time is a once in a generation inflection point for you if you seize it, if you can move beyond, see beyond the challenges that we'll talk about today. It's a once in a generation opportunity for growth, for doing work that you really want to do, for the revenue and the rewards, the financial security that you want, for peace of mind and happiness and joy in the work, and something that will take care of you and your family, not only now, but well into the future. So this is the moment.
Yeah, and the first big challenge to growing a practice you actually like, and one that we work on with almost every private coaching client, is not having a really clear, compelling, long-term destination or goal. So we see things with people coming in where it looks like, well, I just want to match last year, or I want to beat last year, and I work as much as I can. I want as many clients as possible. And as a result, they feel like they're on a hamster wheel. They're exhausted, never getting ahead. It's like being in a pie eating contest where the reward is more pie. And it's never enough. You just can't win. And you can't slow down to take the break you need. So one of my clients, Tommy, is a super busy litigator and a general counsel to a bunch of government agencies. And he's used to getting a lot of shit done in a day. He described it as whack-a-mole. And he wanted help beating the game of whack-a-mole, because if you ever played whack-a-mole, you know it's not winnable. So he wanted the help with the day-to-day stuff, but he also knew that he needed to learn how to lead his team and that there was a bigger picture that would help him. And he knew the model wasn't sustainable for him. So the opportunity when you address this challenge is you'll have a super clear roadmap of what success looks like, where you want to go and why, just like businesses do. And it's surprising how many people come in, we ask the question and there's no good answer. Not because they can't develop it, but because they hadn't thought about it or don't know how to go about it. There's the opportunity to use the purpose that you're clear on to set priorities to drive your daily action rather than just firefighting and responding all day, and to feel like you're in control, making investments for your growth. Now, the reason we lawyers operate this way is because we've never really been taught why it's important or how to do it. We just came out of law school and jumped on the hamster wheel. And then we get so busy in the weeds that we don't feel like there is time. And then if something's uncomfortable to us, one of our strategies for many people is to bury yourself in the very work that isn't all that satisfying anymore, hoping that you might find satisfaction. But there's good news. In all my years of doing this, I've discovered you probably have 80% of the answers in your head. You just haven't seen how your skills are transferable or given yourselves permission or even to consider what changes you might make in your existing practice to meet your goals. And when you step back and see things clearly and put what you have in your head into words, then you get power over it. And it is like rocket fuel for accomplishing what you want.
Yeah, and Doug, that rocket fuel starts with an all-important word, which is why you're doing what you do. And I do a lot of work in law schools and speak to graduating law students on a regular basis. And you used the term default earlier, Doug. For so many people, we come into this profession almost as a default choice. And for many of us, it takes time to connect with why the work matters. In my decades as a criminal defense lawyer, the why for me was helping good young people maintain their ability to go forth in into their futures with unblemished records. And I was driven by a sense of being able to do justice for them. When we reconnect with our why, it is, as you say, rocket fuel. And when we get clear on our values, what we really, really value in our life, that tends to be something that is a lever for us. And we have a pretty simple exercise that we do with our private coaching clients, is that we have them write 2 columns. On the left-hand side, the top 5 things that they say they value, and on the right-hand side, the top 5 places where they spend their time. And both lists are just fine, Doug. Neither list is a problem, but there's often a great incongruity between what we say we value and where we spend our time. And so, where we spend our time is often office, email, office, and where we say we value is family and wellness and lifelong learning and the things that really light us up. And the more that we can be aware of that incongruity and then begin to bring congruity to it so that we are doing more of what we say we value, our happiness index will go up dramatically. And the focus, and this is really important, the focus is not, this is a business webinar today. We're talking about your law practice, but being a lawyer is just one piece of your life. We're not business machines. Yes, we have great work. We have this amazing profession, but that's just a part of who you are. I like to think about this in terms of the wheel of life. It's the wheel that you roll through your life on. It has a lot of dimensionality to it. Your health, your family, the things you like to do for fun. And if your wheel is flat on one side or a number of sides, it's going to be a bumpy road in life. This, and we would invite you today to think about this being an opportunity to take a look at that wheel and make some concrete commitments to yourself to improve all of the areas that may be a little bit flat or out of whack. So getting clear on what you value, getting clear on what's important, bringing greater congruity to every area of your life is a great first step.
Yeah, this is something I did with one of my clients, David. He is a very busy real estate attorney, and he's got a partner who's about 15 years older than him. He wanted to think long term about growth of the practice. He also wanted to recapture some of his time, because in the real estate practice, he was constantly being whipsawed by banks and clients and closings. And there was so much that was in his way before he could work on the bigger picture, what he really wanted to work on. We had to get that out of the way, so he had space to do his work and fill out the wheel. So now, once he had more control, he knew what his goals were and how to get there. We could then see what was in the way and help him how to keep score and how to prioritize. So there's an exercise you can do by answering these basically 4 questions for yourself. And this is where I find many lawyers don't give themselves permission to think about this, because they go directly into problem-solving mode, and their minds are well trained to find all the reasons why it won't work, so they don't even try. So I want to ask you to suspend disbelief and imagine your future if there were no barriers of any kind, that you actually could have what you really wanted and your practice is perfect, just the way you want to be. What would that look like? If you were from the outside looking in, describing that as a story or a character or a scene in a movie, what would it look like? And the second question is about impact. What would it mean to you to have achieved that future? What kind of difference has it made in your life, the life of your clients, the life of your children, your mom and dad, your friends and family? How does that feel? The next question is the alternative. What if you didn't have any of that? What would that mean? Maybe if you just had another 15 or 20 years of the same year you had last year, what would that feel like? And then what's the first step? Just one thing you can do to get in action and to get started. That's the imagine what's possible exercise.
I love those questions, Doug, and we want to invite and encourage you, our friends and colleagues, to not keep this as an academic exercise in your mind, but actually to engage it. Spend some time journaling it, writing it down, because the answers to these questions can provide such clarity for you and create the momentum that you need to overcome the challenges that we're talking about and really reclaim joy and deep satisfaction in this great work that we do. So let's move on to the next hidden agenda, the next item, which is a hidden obstacle, and it's often overlooked. It's often just hiding in plain sight, and that's, Doug, getting the right client mix down. This was a mistake I made very early on in my business as a lawyer. I was the managing partner for 2 decades in a firm outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And for many folks, it looks like many different kinds of clients, a wide variety of matters, shifting gears all of the time. Difficult to keep up with the clients, difficult to keep up with the various areas of the law. Oftentimes, because of the great mix and disparity of the clients, there were issues in getting paid on time, or there were unhappy clients. And for me, it showed up as very often not doing the work that I really, really liked to do. And you ended up, I ended up, and I think this is true for many of our colleagues, in that zero-sum game of always trying to out Walmart because you're marketing based upon price rather than on value. And so you've got bargain shoppers showing up. And so when you get up in the day, it's with not a great sense of anticipation or joy. You're not really loving what you're doing. You're tired a lot of the time. You're worried about making mistakes and worried about getting it all done. You're worried about that feast and famine, what we call the entrepreneurial roller coaster. And you're worried that what if it all dries up and goes away? And at least now in this moment in time when we're doing it, doing this webinar training, there are a lot of economic worries out there. They're going to be transient. Of that, history shows is true, but there's a lot of nervousness out there about having a steady stream of biz.
And there's huge temptation to take whatever clients happen to come in to the door. I remember when you start your law practice, what's the best client? Well, do they have a pulse and a wallet, or at least a pulse? And my client, Eric, was kind of in that mode. He was a partner in a very well-established general practice firm. When he came to me, he was doing whatever kinds of family and criminal law would roll in, and then some other miscellaneous stuff as well. But he was really unhappy and dissatisfied. He kept putting things off. He wasn't efficient. He wanted to find that spark. He wanted to find the thing he really liked to do so he could do more of that. And the first thing we did was we looked at the business and gave him permission to do that. And he didn't know what kind of clients he wanted to bring in his door. They just kind of showed up, and he didn't have any screening system as part of his intake. So he'd wind up wasting a lot of time and taking clients that were far from ideal. And he wasn't making enough money or getting enough up front. And so he had a huge accounts receivable problem. Well, when we got into the work and we discovered that his passion was about a particular segment of family law where it was about protecting the rights of the children, and that was the thing he was really passionate about, his whole world changed. His whole demeanor changed. His money changed. And he was able to build a system to attract those clients and screen out the ones that didn't fit. So the opportunity, and the one that most lawyers overlook, is to identify who the clients are that you want to bring in the door, the ones who pay you what you're worth and you like working with. And we were able to upgrade his business development system. And those who weren't his right people, he was able to confidently send them to other places, which, by the way, generated more referrals back to him. But that's a whole nother program. It's what we call the red velvet rope approach. Now, the reason, again, I like to go with my why guy. So the reason lawyers operate this way is because we haven't really accepted the power and the profit that comes from this kind of focus. We let FOMO or the fear of missing out hold us back. We cast a wide net, willing to take any kind of fish that might swim into it, often in the wrong part of the ocean. But the good news is you've been practicing for a long time. You know what you like to do, and you know what you don't like to do. You know the kind of people that light you up in a good way and a bad way. You just need to follow a set of simple steps to break through and address this challenge to get the right client mix. Now, when I work with clients to do it, I have a little thing I call the clients matter analysis. And we look back over several years and look at clients and related matters. We create criteria based on your goals and values, Walt talked about. And then we build that profile and we plug it into a client development system. And when you're clear on the problems you solve, the people you solve them for, and why, we know where to focus our marketing and our websites and our LinkedIn. We know how to talk to our people. We know how to screen out the people who are not inside our red velvet rope. And we know how to focus the back office operations so you can be efficient and profitable. Because the right client mix can transform how you feel about your practice, the quality of your practice, and the quality of money in your bank account, just like it did for Eric.
There's a pretty easy way to start this, Doug, and it starts with a formula that most of us have heard about in various contexts, is the Pareto Principle, or the 80-20 rule. What's true when you sit down is that 80% of your problems, 20% of your problems are caused by 80% of your clients. 20% of your challenges are caused by 80% of your clients, but really 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients. 20% of your efforts lead to 80% of your outcomes. And this 80-20 rule is really, really powerful. If you can identify the 20% of your clients that lead to the 80% of your revenue, and begin to identify the characteristics of those people, where they've come from, how they've come to you, and then begin to narrow your focus into those specific areas, getting uber clear about the problems that you solve for them in their words, then you're going to have what Doug referred to as a business development system to bring them to your door. And as Doug suggested, we've got a program for that, but it's not this one. But where I invite you to begin the analysis is that 80-20 rule. If you look at your book of business right now, your revenues from 2021, for example, that's a big enough data set. 80% of your revenue will have come from 20% of clients, or a group of clients, or a mix of clients that's going to illuminate for you where you ought to focus your efforts.
Absolutely. And that doing that is like mining for gold in your own backyard. So the other challenge, one of the top challenges that we see, is this notion that if it's got to be done right, you better do it yourself. And so you're not getting the support that you need. So this sounds familiar. This might be a challenge where you feel like you need to make every decision, maybe because the people around you don't know how or won't decide. You're spending a lot of time on non-legal work, like bookkeeping and fixing the copier and making sure the coffee is stocked. Maybe you're the first one in the office every morning and you're the last one to leave. And you bring home work with you most nights. And if you're lucky, you get one day off on the weekend. Feels like you're running behind and trying to put too much in the jar, so you're late for appointments. Your staff, this was an issue with my client David that I mentioned earlier, was constantly interrupting you. And then they don't do their jobs the way you feel that they should. Or your clients are calling you to find out what's going on with your cases. So that feels like you never have enough time to do what you need to do. Everybody else's agenda is ruling your day. You feel frantic, overwhelmed most of the time, and you're really, really tired. I mean, exhausted, like, can I take a nap tired? And you're frustrated with yourself and your staff and maybe everybody else you interact with. And it feels like it's all you can do to keep your head above water. If those sound familiar, then you need to start looking at support.
Yeah, and it's, we're part of our DNA, Doug, is that we're can-do people. I mean, we know how to get stuff done, and we double down and we do it. And we believe that we're the only ones who can do it. And then we end up bringing to bear a lot of pressure on ourselves and others. I was remembering a client, Loretta, who, brilliant family lawyer. I began working with her, and within, I don't know, about 2 or 3 weeks, she thought I was a miracle worker because I was able to add about $100,000 to her income in that short a period of time, Doug. It was amazing. And you
are a miracle worker, Megan.
It was amazing. I added $100,000 to her income in 3 weeks. And you know what I did? This was extraordinary. I suggested that she send out her bills, which she hadn't gotten to in 6 months. And lo and behold, the money started rolling in. And the challenge, we're supposed to say challenges, coaches, is not as problems, but the problem for Loretta was that she thought that she was the person who she was a solo. She was amazing, but she thought, oh my God, I have to do all of this. And things like billing fell into the cracks. And so when you begin to look at the opportunity to step out of this sad story, you can overcome the obstacles that have gotten into your way. You can be in better control of your time and your energy. You can be more focused and productive. You can have more time. There'll be less stress and overwhelmed. You'll feel satisfied with your practice and your life again if you can pull out of this mindset, this silo. And the reasons, are not dissimilar for the reasons that we show up this way are not dissimilar to what Doug has shared before. It's the way that we've been programmed. It's the way that we were trained as young associates. It's what we saw. Or sometimes, I don't know, some of us are control freaks. Maybe it's the need to be in control, or the fact that we can't trust others. Or maybe it's a fear of investing in others or investing in a team. The good news, friends, is that you don't need to reinvent any wheels to fix this. This is not an unusual challenge. There are lots of examples where lawyers got more control and more time and more money when they try to let go, when they do let go of trying to do everything themselves. So again, we want to make this super implementable for you. So how do you enter into this? Well, the very first thing you need to do is to begin to identify the high value tasks that are your highest and best use in the world. So if you're a litigator, that's showing up in court. If you're a deal maker, that's you sitting at the negotiating table. A filtering question could be, do you need a law degree to do that? Is it something that only you can do? If yes, why? If not, it's an opportunity to outsource or to delegate. A key question here is, who else should be doing this? And the typical areas for this, like Loretta, would be a bookkeeper and or accountant, an assistant who is keeping track of your AR, a system or person that helps with the initial screening of possible clients, a system or a person that's helping to field initial inquiries so that you're getting only the high probability clients that you like. anything that has to do with your website or your LinkedIn or your social media or your telephone, all of that is probably not your highest and best use.
So the way to get started, because I know it can be overwhelming when you look at all the different things, is just to pick one area, maybe the one that's the most irritating to you. Often for people, it's the bookkeeping and accounting, and break it down and see how long it's taking for you and when it needs to happen. And so you understand how it's working. So when I've done with clients, we wind up with a very clear picture of what needs to happen and kind of a solution to do it. And we start off with, well, that seems to be easy. I shouldn't have to write it down. I said, well, all right, explain your expectation. And they can't, because the process of writing it down is what creates the clarity. So especially when you're looking at bringing on an outside resource, if you're a solo where you want to subcontract or outsource, you have to be very clear on what you want. So I have another client who has an office assistant that really can't do everything he needs. So we've been working on identifying and filling the gaps to create a job profile to see how much it should cost, do the cost justification and a payback. And we're going out and trying to find the person and onboard them so that he can get more time and make money when he's not working. So when you do this, you'll see when you should be investing by bringing people on either virtually or in real life. And it's often much sooner than you think, especially when you do that payback and what your billable rate is for doing legal work versus admin work. Doing this for the first time takes a bit of courage and some structure. But when you do, it's a huge accelerator for your business. So I like to Walt and I talk about a stop doing list, right? So create one. What are 3 things that you know you shouldn't be doing, but you haven't yet had the courage to let go of? Write them down. You might get more than 3. That's okay. Now, flip the script. Rather than assuming that you have to be the one, make the case why it would be better to have somebody else do it. And then pick one and get an action.
I love that. And action is where it happens. If ideas and webinars like these were the only thing that was required for your success, we'd already be rich and thin and living on a beach somewhere. It's the implementation, the action that makes the difference, friends. So we've talked so far about the challenge of not having a clear destination or goal. We've talked about challenge number 2, not having a system to bring the right clients to your doorstep. Challenge number 3, as we've just talked about, is taking on way too much yourself and doing it all by yourself. Challenge 4, this next challenge is one of the biggest ones and the hardest ones of all. And it's one that will completely shift the nature of the work you do in the world and completely shift your ability to exponentially grow your revenue. It's one of the ones that we go deep with our private clients, and it's what we call the CEO mindset. And the challenge is not thinking like a CEO. So here's the scoop. One of the things that keeps us stuck, that keeps us in the weeds, that keeps us on that hamster wheel. I had a paralegal once that said, Walt, you're like a hamster on a wheel. And that was not a compliment. And one of the things that keeps us on that hamster wheel is that we think about our law practices as law practices. What did he say? Yes, we think about our law practices and not as businesses. And this is a huge distinction. When you begin to think about your practice as a business, then you realize that someone actually has to be in charge, the CEO of the business. And at the outset, that role may be fulfilled by you, but the mindset is that you're running a business. A practitioner A tactician is focused on working in her business, grinding it out, doing the work, billing the hours, being the lawyer and the professional that she was trained to do. A business owner, on the other hand, the CEO of that business, isn't down in the weeds. The CEO is thinking ahead and planning and strategizing and casting a vision about where the business is going and how to get there. It's about looking at the big picture and becoming strategic around the challenges and the obstacles and the effort that's going to get there, and asking that who, not how question. Ultimately, it's about turning a practice, which is way too often an expensive indentured servitude, into an asset that's actually worth something. And by the way too many of our practices die on the vine because they can never be sold as an asset. These businesses, these practices, if we can turn them into an asset, like a real business, it runs like a machine and actually can set you free. So I'm working with an extraordinary entrepreneur and business owner now, Jason. He's an employment lawyer. When he came to me, he was stuck at $250,000 a year. He was like that lawyer that Doug was telling you about, doing everything, trying to make it all happen, keeping all the plates spinning, keeping all the balls in the air. This year, he will hit very close to $1 million in his small practice. He has one other lawyer. He's got a couple of assistants, one paralegal. He will hit $1 million in gross. And the shift began when Jason began to see his business, his practice as a business. He began seeing himself as the CEO. He began to see the business as an organization with an organizational chart. He began to ask the important questions. Who else should be doing this? What systems and processes do we need to do to streamline our work? What will make things easier, more reliable, more repeatable, with less effort and less error? What metrics, what data do we need to evaluate to track our growth and progress? He began to grow a functional team, began to see and embrace his own zone of genius, that place where he was doing his best work, the work that he really loved to do, the work that he got really well paid for. And he began to surround himself with others that protected that zone of genius. So how do you go about doing it? So this, as I said, is some of the most important work that we do with our private coaching clients, because it's really hard to see this. It's not the way we're trained to think, and it's hard to see it for yourself. It's easy to stay stuck in the weeds. So where I want to invite you to begin is, but start by thinking about yourself as a business owner rather than a practitioner. Identify that work that you love to do and that you're really well paid for. Identify the places where you're experiencing the most friction, where you get caught in the weeds. Ask yourself, what system or technology can I bring in here that will help me to get out of these weeds? Ask yourself, who else should be doing this? Begin to draw yourself an organizational chart like a real business, and everything will begin to change. And don't worry if it feels uncomfortable at first. It feels uncomfortable for everyone. Lean into that discomfort. Take small, consistent steps.
So right. I love that. And, when I talk to people about this, it's, you've got two jobs. You've got a CEO job and you've got the one delivering the services job. And they really are different things. And before we go on to our final challenge and how to get through it, we talk so much about being in action. And the step that Walt just described, thinking like a CEO, is very, very difficult to do on your own, because you're trying to modify or change 20 or 30 years worth of programming and conditioning. And it's very hard to see. And in a couple minutes, we're going to tell you how you can get some support on that so that you don't have to go it alone, so that this isn't just another webinar that you listen to, nod your head, make notes, and then there's another webinar where you listen and make notes, but stuff doesn't change. We're action oriented. So the next thing is not having documented operating procedures. Now, I see so many lawyers, it's almost as if there's this fear of procedures because it might be limiting or because every client is different. But you might need more documented operating procedures if you're finding everything takes way longer than it should. Like you're constantly reinventing the wheel and looking for that document, trying to remember what client you did it for so you can use it again. Your staff is making the same silly mistakes over and over again. Everybody's stressed out and not productive. You're unhappy with your staff, and they're probably unhappy with you too. Papers are everywhere, and your electronic files, not much better. You're not getting paid on time or in full, and you're not getting the clients you want. And as a result, it perpetuates this cycle of being unhappy and dissatisfied and feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. And then you feel like you need to personally fix it. And then you feel like the bottleneck. And it doesn't have to be that way if we embrace the discipline that businesses use to produce amazing results by having simple, clear, documented operating procedures.
And it's not just businesses, Doug. I was, as you know, in Nepal for 3 weeks recently, and I flew into the most dangerous airport in the world, an airport called Lukla at 9,000 feet. And I was in the front seat of the airplane, and it was one of these old twin otters, and it had no door to the cockpit. So I was in the front seat, and I was looking into the cockpit, and we were coming into this crazy small airstrip in Lukla, Nepal. And all of a sudden, I saw the pilot look down to his left and pick up something. I thought, please, God, just keep your eye on the airstrip. And he picked up this laminated card, and it was a checklist for landing. Pilots have checklists, which are standard operating procedures. Surgeons have checklists and standard operating procedures so they don't leave like clamps and sponges in people. Creating simple standard operating procedures like checklists is a great first step for moving forward like this. I remember waking up in the middle of the night. I shared with you that I was a litigator, a trial lawyer, and there's a bad thing that happens in litigation. It's called the statute of limitations. It's the one mistake in the law that can't be fixed. I'd wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat about statutes of limitation because the dates were everywhere. And we had a few near misses. If you've been in practice for a while, it's not unusual to have a few near misses. I needed a standard operating procedure for it. And once I created a standard operating procedure for how those critical dates got calendared upon intake, where they got posted on the front of the file, on the office calendar, on my calendar, we had several different fail-safes, SOPs, standard operating procedures, that took care of any further anxiety, and everything ran smoothly and there were no near misses. Standard operating procedures for onboarding clients, for offboarding clients. There's a tremendous opportunity for you to have a much smoother running practice and a more joyful life. You'll produce results faster and more reliably. You'll reduce mistakes, aka malpractice. You'll improve your efficiency and your consistency. You'll avoid reinventing the wheel and doing the same thing over and over and over again. I don't know how many times before I created an onboarding SOP that I would write the same damn letter over and over again. Improve your staff training and retention and engagement so that you're not doing that over and over again. Having standard operating procedures for increasing your client experience. Doug and I teach and speak a lot about up-leveling the experience that we give to our clients, creating delight as lawyers. The bar is fairly low for that. We can raise the level of client experience, and we can do it with standard operating procedures. And all of this will lead to a lot more satisfaction. You'll work less and you'll make a whole lot more.
It's almost, I mean, it's when you use these disciplines, that's just what happens. It's you run the plays and you get the results. And we see so many attorneys who make their lives so much more difficult because they resist building processes and writing them down. And there are lots of excuses. It's too hard. I can't write a procedure for every little situation. It takes too long. People don't follow them anyway. And, it's not that broken. Well, that's what maybe you've got the intention to do it. And you've been hearing us talk about it maybe more than once. And you're meaning to get to it, but the can gets kicked down the road. Well, you know what the road to hell is paved with, right? If you want to avoid reinventing the wheel, you're going to need to document how you run your business. It's the only way you're going to grow profitably and get the most value out of your team. And if it's helpful for you to think about that different CEO hat, which is the business, which should have procedures, and the lawyer hat, if that's helpful, do that. But start writing things down. And it's relatively easy to start this process. And once you do it, you can get some rhythm, some mojo around it. And here's the thing that surprises clients when I share this tip. You do not need to be the person that writes everything. You just have to have a system for people to follow as you go. And it could be as simple as have your assistant begin to write down the steps that she follows when she opens a file. And that's really helpful because you'll discover the as is, what's going on right now. And then you engage in a conversation among professionals on how to make it better. That's often way better, and it gets people to buy in than you starting with a blank sheet of paper and saying, this is how it should go. Or maybe you try both and compare notes.
I think it all starts with pancakes, Doug.
It all starts with pancakes.
It all starts with pancakes. So I was teaching this concept the other day to one of our clients, and it was a little bit of a challenging thing to get a grasp on. And he had a 5-year-old, and I said, "Does your 5-year-old know how to make pancakes?" And he said, "No, but he really likes pancakes." I said, "Well, let's pretend that you're going to teach Ben, your 5-year-old, how to make pancakes." And that's where you would begin with the ideation around SOPs. It's that granular step-by-step process that you would teach to someone who knows nothing about the process, how to do the process. There's a reason that the 17-year-old hamburger flipper at McDonald's in San Francisco makes the same hamburger as the 17-year-old in the Bronx, who makes the same hamburger as the 17-year-old in St. Petersburg, because there's an SOP that a 17-year-old boy or girl can follow to make hamburgers. It's a set of written instructions about how to perform a task or activity. And you create it in a granular way so that person can move from point to point and do it without interruption and without error. And people use these in their businesses, with operations, with business development and finance, across the spectrum of your practice. And as Doug suggested, it can start in a very simple place. And I suggest that simple place be where your highest level of friction or frustration is. I suggested to you the thing that kept me up at night was statutes of limitation. It may be for you doing a process that you have found yourself doing over and over again. Wherever that friction point is, start there. And Doug, I think that's our 5 challenges.
Yes, it is. And, one of the things we mentioned earlier, we've shared a lot of our kind of insider secrets today so that you can overcome the challenges that we have talked about and start building and allowing yourself to accept that you can actually have fun and be happy and satisfied in your law practice, and that you deserve it, and that you should be doing an effort to do that. So we also, I also mentioned, Walt, earlier that we see this so often with lawyers. We have our, and I saw it when I was the executive director of the Connecticut State Bar Association, the regulars who come to all the CLEs, often the same one over and over again, and they think it's great stuff, but they don't make any progress. And we want to help with that. So we've got a special offer for you for attending today's program. Walt, you can drop that in, something to help you accelerate your progress and break through your biggest obstacles faster as an individual, with a one-on-one strategy call about your practice. So, Walt, you want to explain how they could take advantage of that?
I have already jumped on that. I'm way ahead of you. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, if you're listening to the replay, it's going to be down below the screen. You'll find a blue button. You push the little blue button. It'll take you to a very short form that gives us the intel as to how to connect with you. Somebody from our team will reach out and set up a call. As I said, the ideation, as Doug has said, that the ideation is great, but getting into action around this is the key to success. And oftentimes having someone to jumpstart you is the best way to get going. We're passionate about seeing you succeed, and so we open up a limited number of these spaces when we do programs like this. Go over there on the right-hand side, click the button, enter your intel, and let's have some time together. And if you have questions, feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat. And I just want to offer you, I was talking with someone today who was thinking about finding the right coach for them. If you're thinking like professional athletes or executives that you might be ready for a coach, this might be something you should look at, then you're ready for us to have a strategy call. And what we're going to do is identify one of your challenges. We're going to give you some specific tips for your business, and you'll discover whether coaching might be a fit for you. No charge, no obligation, just a chance for us to be in service to you as members of our community. Yes, and as I said at the outset, Doug, we have the greatest profession on the planet. You shared that we get to take care of people in their times of greatest need, that we get to help businesses through challenges. We get to grapple with complicated problems and negotiate big deals, and we get to literally change the world. We get to impact the world in an extraordinary way. And as highly trained professionals, we ought to be able to enjoy the fruits of the labors, the rich rewards of freedom, and the prosperity, the financial rewards of the work we do. And this is a challenging time. As I said at the very beginning, we are at an inflection point, but inflection points can be unsettling because they feel like, which direction are we going in? But there's incredible opportunity now that if we can lean into these challenges and move through them, you can grow and scale an extraordinary practice that actually is a business. And the definition of a business is a machine that requires only periodic maintenance, a machine that does not require you to be operating it all the time. You have the opportunity to create a machine that gives you not only those financial rewards, but an extraordinary life as well. And so it is our great privilege and gift to have been able to spend this time with you. We wish you the best in your practice growth, and in the joy that you deserve in your life. We'll look forward to seeing you on future webinars. We hope you'll accept our invitation and book some time with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Doug?
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you. This has been a great time, and we've got more coming up, so stay tuned, and you'll be getting a replay of this, and also some emails with some resources that we talked about. So watch your email box for that.
Take good care, everybody. Bye for now.